Thank you so much for coming here. I know I heard that there's a lot of good energy in the room. That's not going to be the case when I'm done with you 20 minutes from now. You're all going to be depressed. So I apologize in advance because I'm a neurologist and I'm going to give you facts. I'm going to give you facts about what's happening to your brain, to my brain, and to our brains over the last 15 or 20 years. And that's because in neurology, we know. We now have the technology to see where thoughts begin, where they end, and we have the technology to follow what's happening with the advent of digital technology. So here we go. To begin with, I'm going to show you a neuron. This is what our brain cells look like, the cells that do the thinking for us in our head. Each one has 10,000 connections, and there's a billion of them, which means that we have something like 1,000 trillion connections in our brain, and they wire together to form a giant switchboard over the course of our lives. This is what makes us human. We literally wire cells together. And once the wiring happens, we start to develop knowledge. But it has 3 steps. The first step is information. That's what we're doing now. Then you have to sort of do something with that information. You have to file it. And then ultimately and ideally, you have to connect different parts of the brain to create what we call wisdom. Notice there's no direct pathway from information to wisdom. Something has to happen to your brain. Knowing does not equal understanding. You probably know a lot of people who know a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, they can't understand anything. That's neurology. So, how do we understand? You have to provoke. You have to force the brain to compare and contrast. If 2 things happen identically the same way, no connection forms. So the best way to do that is to continually prod the brain and actually to make it form mistakes. So for you students in the room, tell your teacher if you're making mistakes, you're actually learning. Mistakes should be rewarded and not penalized because a brain that's making mistakes is learning. The smartest brain in the world is one that's made every single mistake. And a good brain, therefore, knows how to find the facts, and for that, computers are terrific, but it has to know what to do with them. It has to know how to reflect on them. So over the course of time, this is what our evolution has looked like, starting from the left, going to the right, and now we're all the way over to the far right. We're in the world of digital screen use. So much so that the average person spends 7 hours a day on a screen or cell phone, checks the phone 50 times a day. That means if you do it, or if I do it once, you do it 100 times. Email 13 hours a week. 25% of us communicate under the same roof digitally, and more than half of us fall asleep with it and wake up with it. Our kids are a little bit worse off because as opposed to us, they don't use the screen that much for work. They use it for social media, for chit-chat and this, that, and the other thing. They're on it up to 4 to 9 hours a day. But only 10 minutes of that they spend on practical issues. They check their phone 78 times a day. They communicate between each other 2 out of 3 times digitally, which means that our young people, when they communicate face-to-face, it's only 1 out of 3 times. It's all digital. So much so that by the time that they're 18, they will have spent 30 school years and 16 job years in front of a screen. So, when they're on the bus stop talking to each other, it looks like that. You know these slides. When they're at a cafe, it looks like this. When they go to the museum, it looks like that. And what's happening in the meantime? We're not happy anymore. In the last 10 to 15 years, there's a 33% increase in depression worldwide. More people today kill themselves than die from war, murder, and terrorism combined. Mankind is not happy. U.S. Preventative Services Task Force recommends to screen all children 8 to 18 every visit for anxiety. I used to screen them for growth, vaccinations, and so on. No, now I have to ask them if they're anxious. We're getting dumber. IQs are falling worldwide, and there's a steady decline in social and intellectual skills in all developed countries except for Denmark and Finland, who are holding steady. Year by year, same teacher, same curriculum, same school, test results are worse. Why? Well, you probably intuit it now. The way in which the brain learns information is more important than what it learns. It doesn't wire. If it learns information in short snippets of SMSing, texting messages, and staying in the digital world, there's no provocation. Nothing happens. And that which keeps us in that world is the cell phone. If you type in negative effects of cell phone use on the brain, you get 30 million references. Why? Because they interrupt, they distract. Even if they're not being used, there are fascinating studies that show if a cell phone is in your pocket or even in the room next to you, it still detracts from your ability to integrate information. So there's a degradation of learning, dialogue, and empathy, and it keeps you in that digital world. And what else keeps you in that digital world? For 60% of people, it's social media. Here's the prototype, Facebook, and here's a statement from Sean Parker, who resigned from Facebook when he found out how it works. We're abusing human psychology. Me, Zuckerberg's system, we all knew exactly what we were doing, and God only knows what it does to the brains of our children. Sean Parker. What does it do to the brains of our children and to us? This is dopamine on the top left, and on the top right you see our brains, and that blue area on the top left is our frontal lobe, which does our thinking, and there's a black line that connects to our deeper centers, and those centers are responsible for happiness, for emotions. Whenever something good happens, our dopamine goes up. If somebody gives us a compliment, so on and so forth. If you take heroin, your dopamine will go up. If you're on video games all day long, your dopamine will go up. If I take the brain of a heroin addict and a video game user and I put them into a magnetic resonance machine, that pathway lights up and I can't tell which brain belongs to who. So much so that today's society, now we have a medical term for this called FOMO, fear of missing out. How many of you, when you get up in the morning and you go to work and you find out that you don't have your cell phone, are willing to keep going and not go back for it? You gotta have it. I have a fear of not having that phone, nomophobia, especially among our young. More than half of teenagers would rather break their arm than lose their cell phone. I'm not making this up. There's the reference. More than half of us adults would rather lose their wallet than their cell phone. We're addicted. Stimulation leads to stupidification. It's not a medical term, but it's one we'll remember. And that's what's happening. So much so that Oxford Word of the Year 2024 is brain rot. The result of endless social media scrolling and mind-numbing content. So, what are the neurological effects of brain technology dependence? Well, it's addictive. It messes up with your mood and sleep. It reduces your ability to reason. But most of all, it does this because it changes who we are as human beings. It alters the evolutionary pathway that brought us to where we are today. This is a lovely slide of a group of elephants in South Africa, and what you see, aside from that really cutie one in the middle, is that there's only one of them that has tusks. These elephants have developed a mutation where they're born without tusks. Why? Because they're hunted and killed for their tusks. So a mutation came along, they're all alive, their social structure is a big mess, but they're here. We call this de-evolution. This is a composite slide of brains of young children from Cincinnati Hospital, which shows the main highway, the main wiring that connects the frontal lobe way down there on the left around to the library in the temporal lobe in the hippocampus. What's blue is good, what's white is falling apart. What's white is falling apart in direct relationship to the number of minutes children spend looking at a screen. This is screen time rotting your brain. And here's the study from the Journal of Pediatrics, the most reputable journal that we have. On the left, you have an intelligence processing, and down below you have the number of hours you spend in front of a screen. There's a direct linear relationship. Digital technology is to the human brain what the elephant hunter is to elephants. De-evolution. This is not opinion. This is anatomy. Here is water seeping into the central parts of the brain in video gamers in direct proportion to the amount of time that they spend on a video screen, and so on and so on and so on. The studies are basically all there. Who knows this? Well, the people who created this knew it, and they didn't let their children use what they created. Tim Cook blocked social websites for his son. Bill Gates, only one computer in the home. And Steve Jobs, quote, "My kids never had an iPad. At home we control technology." This is the school they sent their children to, the Waldorf School in Silicon Valley. Why? It doesn't have any computers. World Health Organization knows this, and other organizations, and here are their recommendations for them and for all of you. No screens for any child till 2 to 5, an hour a day, and more than 5, 2 hours a day. Because if you use it more, you hamper brain development. UNESCO, global organization monitoring technology and education, ban all phones in all schools worldwide. It's happened in 79 countries so far. Quote, excessive cell phone use is linked to reduced educational performance and emotional stability. What about learning from computers? Never mind the phones, let's put them to the side and let's just do the computer learning that all the schools are now implementing. Well, clear scientific evidence that digital computers hurt more than help student learning. Karolinska Institute, 2023. There should be a return to learning from books. Why? Because there's many neurologic reasons, but all the studies prove that learning from paper is much better for the brain than learning from a screen, because when you learn from paper, you frame everything on a page, and you remember the pages, and you're able to file them more effectively in the library of your mind than scrolling. Plus, you hold the paper, which reinforces that learning process. OECD, MIT, NIH concur. Students who frequently use computers in school often have much worse results on tests because they don't prod you. There's no middleman. They don't force you to make errors. And what about using AI in school? ChatGPT. Super study that just came out, MIT, Super Lab. ChatGPT users have a 47% decrease in brain connections after 3 months. 83% of them can't quote what they just wrote or had written by ChatGPT. But here's the worst part. When users who use ChatGPT then stop using ChatGPT, their brains are damaged to the point where they don't bounce back. We call this a cognitive deficit. So has anybody, and I challenge anybody and I plead with anybody in this room to show me one study where digitalization has improved test scores or satisfaction. Please give me that study so I can stop lecturing. No one. That's because AI and digitalization make thinking optional. It does it for you. And just like the people who invented social media, the people who invented AI issued warnings against it. 1,000 experts, future of life, pause giant AI experiments. It needs to be paused because it's a serious risk for society, and so on and so forth. Even the Pope got into it. AI poses a threat to human dignity, justice, and labor. So, philosophically, what do we do with technology going into the future if everything that's really made our lives better has already been invented before digital technology? What's happening now that technological acceleration is basically automatizing society and even our morals. We all begin to think, look, shop, and act alike. What's happening now that we're transforming more in the last 15 years than we have in the last 25,000 years? This is a tournament in Augusta, Georgia from the late 60s, early 70s. Arnold Palmer in the middle. I love the way people go to golf tournaments. Then they've got jackets and ties, and the ladies have dresses and so on. Same tournament, 2018. If you don't take a picture of it, it doesn't exist. Gotta do the selfie because the selfie is me, and I need to throw myself out there. Why? Black hole. Everybody's doing the same thing, just circling the drain. So, what are the conclusions? Well, first of all, we're not here anymore. We're somewhere else. How many of you actually go home and do nothing for a half an hour every day? Just sit and stare. To begin with, why do we have to use this stuff? Why does an old woman have to get a computer to file a tax return? Why do I have to take a credit card to get a car reservation when I have cash in my pocket? Why do I have to scan a QR code to get a menu? Why? Isn't that a violation of our human rights, of who we are as human beings? So digital technology isn't neutral. We create our tools and they create us. A programmable world means a programmable person. That's why the question at the end of the day shouldn't be whether computers or AI are going to think like us. The neurologic question is, will we ever be able to think differently than a computer? Because we're not above evolution. We are biological creatures. And technology is influencing our evolutionary parameters. Because anything that diminishes our need to think and that prioritizes comfort is bad for us. Anything that makes life easy for us and for our brain isn't good. So every technology really should be assessed from an ethical point of view before it's released. Is it good or is it bad? Anything in life, or everything in life that gives something, also takes something away, except for love. We are our brain. You are the person that you are because of what's in your head, not because of the digital world. Our well-being is based on our ability to think critically by experiencing and overcoming challenges. We need friction in our lives because friction activates neurons. Neurons form connections. The connections deepen and we become smarter. And at the end of the day, what probably matters the most? I would think it's happiness. And how do we get happy? Well, luckily we have studies on that as well. More than any other factor, the quality of happiness is determined by the number of social relations that we have. There's a wonderful study ongoing since 1938 from Harvard that's looking at this. It's the number of friends that we have, biological friends, and encounters that we have that are face-to-face, eye-to-eye, that determine happiness, success, lifespan, overall health, well-being, and so on and so forth. It's real people. Our life is all about us, real people. So I'm going to ask you, who's happier? Them or them? Well, there is hope, because although it's slipping away, our future's still literally in our hands. And this is where the hope begins. I never thought I'd be saying this a few years ago, but I am now. Get rid of your cell phones. And if you can't, turn them on and off just to communicate. That's the portal to the digital world. That's the needle through which the digital heroin goes into your brain. And for God's sakes, don't give them to your kids. You are not alone. If you don't do that, if we don't do that, we'll end up like this. Human evolution. But I'm confident that we'll hopefully begin to regulate ourselves so that we'll end up like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for throwing you into deep depression after lunch. I've written a book about this. The last part of it is devoted to this talk, or vice versa. But I'm going to use technology to defeat technology, and here it is. You can scan it. There are 250 references to what I've just said. So please feel free. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's question time. Do we have any questions? Raise your hands. Yes, we've got a gentleman over there in a red jacket.
My name is Christian and I'm from Denmark. You mentioned Denmark, that IQ is not going down in Denmark and Finland. And I think about walking around in Copenhagen and I don't think I see that. So why is IQ not going down in Denmark and Finland?
Because the societies are much more cohesive and because they have education systems which basically get it. In Finland, they've abandoned computers or are abandoning computers, and the society is much more cohesive there, generally speaking. It's holding. It's not improving. It's holding. So.
Cool. Thank you, Christian from Denmark. Do we have anyone? Yes, we've got a lady over here in a yellow jacket.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is, have you ever presented this to any big tech representative? And if so, what did they say?
I have, and they say, oh yeah, you're really right.
Did it change anything?
Absolutely not. Because they're interested in only one thing, making money. Remember that eight people on the planet control or have 50% of all of the money on the planet. 8 people have more than the bottom 50%, and those people are in the tech and energy sectors. And the reason that they got to where they are is by not listening to me.
And let's be honest, no drug dealer ever said that heroin was good for you.
Right.
Yes, we've got a gentleman over there with the glasses.
Are you optimistic about the regulation on this field? Because maybe European Union or other governments could have some effects on this. Of course, we may haven't seen good examples in this, but what do you think about that?
So far, it's a big problem because it works much faster than regulation. It's the reason that democracies are failing worldwide, because regulation and democracies are no longer relevant. when you can do world politics by being a TikTok president of the United States, you don't have time to convene Congress or Parliament or the EU. Never mind the EU with its cumbersome debating process. By the time it's done debating anything about debating anything, that technology has moved on. So it's going to be very, very difficult to regulate it.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question. Yes, we've got a woman over here in a stripy top.
Your MIT study is shocking. Is it reversible? If I take my students at university and I say from tomorrow on, digital detox, does the dementia go away?
It does. It's in direct proportion to the amount of time that they've spent in the digital world. It's inverse proportion, yes.
Thank you. Yes, we've got a gentleman.
What do you think about the idea or the saying that those who don't adopt the technology will be left behind?
Well, that's the entire saying of our civilization, and we're at the point where we have to step out of it or submit. We are at the philosophical point of our very existence, and we're a bunch of drug addicts who are all in the same room saying, if you don't take the drug, you're going to be left behind. There are ways, of course, to get out of it. The first way is to get together with like-minded people and decide that you and your children are simply going to step out of it and live the way that we did when we were young. But it's very difficult because it's becoming mandatory. That's why, and I'm probably not the only person saying this at this conference, unless something really dramatic happens, and mankind has never been known to do a philosophical reset just based on moral values alone without any additional reward, that reset will be done for us.
Great question. I actually have a follow-up question, if that's okay, if you guys will indulge me. In your perspective, your thesis, you're very critical of what the tech companies have done to us as a species. Do you feel alone?
No, I know I'm not alone, and I don't feel alone. And as a physician, quite often we are alone, and it's difficult to tell people bad news. But it's our job to tell people, everyone, ourselves included, what it is that we need to know to make our lives better. And I do see changes happening. The big question is whether it's going to happen enough and in time.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have anyone else? Yes, we've got a gentleman over there.
You don't seem to be depressed.
No, you're right. I'm a winemaker, as was mentioned.
Thank you.
And that cures just about everything. So no, I mean, I try to keep an open mind, and I, of course, do make my lectures dramatic because people remember things that are more emotional rather than just dry facts. And deep down inside, I'm an optimist, although I'm having it slightly more and more difficult as we go along.
Yes, we have a gentleman over there in a white shirt.
I was quite surprised by your usage of de-evolution. As far as I know, modern evolutionary theories reject the idea of de-evolution as it would imply a teleologic direction of evolution which is not given.
I knew somebody would say that sooner or later. You're absolutely right. I mean, devolution is a part of evolution. I'm not going to get into theology, but it is semantics. Everything that happens for a purpose. So you're right, it is evolution.
Thank you.
But it is sometimes in evolution, species do lose a lot of fundamental functions.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes, the woman in the excellent pink jacket.
Oh.
So I suppose that my generation, it would be easier to accept this idea of leaving our phones or cell phones because we grew up that way. But if you have children, were you able to convince them? I mean, the generation Z and Y, when they grew up with a cell phone in their hands, how is it possible to convince them?
Thank you for that question. It's an excellent question. Our children have cell phones because their parents gave them to them. And their parents, the millennials, are the first generation to be negatively influenced by technology because they had lives they have lives in existence that are relatively overcomforting. And they're the first generation to think that their children have rights. Children have absolutely no right to anything that can be bought. They have a right to love, education, and so on. They don't have a right to poison themselves because other children are doing it, because parents, for the first time ever, are neglecting their role because parents only have one job on planet Earth. That is to have children and be role models for them, raise them, and then get out of the way. Not to give them a cell phone so that they have something to do. And the way that children's brains learn the best is, as mentioned in the beginning, trial and error. Let them go out, let them fall, let them get hurt, let them get into fights, let them make up, let them break up. Developing social skills is the single best determinant to develop intellectual skills.
Big round of applause for Martin Stránský, everybody.